Names, a cornerstone of interaction. When developing a piece of media or a concept or anything, the name you assign to it will be incredibly important. While the design details and aesthetics will drive its relevance at a visual level, first and foremost it will be referred to by its given name. The ease of pronunciation, the memorability, and its cultural relevance will determine just how close to a household name anything becomes. The name game in tokusatsu is something that is incredibly important to its overall image. Other books, TV shows, anime, and similar forms of media may have some abstractly creative titles that do bear relevance to the underlying themes that are attempting to be portrayed and don't always need to directly reference any specific characters or names present in its story. With something like Super Sentai, the title of the show is, well, the team itself. The team headlining its respective year of airtime holds a huge responsibility, as its namesake is used to identify not just themselves as this year's Gradient Guardians, but for the overall identity of Super Sentai within that year. Therefore, it's important for that name to be creative, have relevance to that year's theme and concept, and work in a multitude of contexts. Now, while Super Sentai has their own challenge set for themselves in terms of how to name their new team and yearly flavor, on the other side of the world, Power Rangers has a similarly challenging task. Power Rangers is iconic for adapting almost everything from its Super Sentai counterpart and interpreting it in their own way, converting these baseline concepts and motifs into ones that are digestible to a new audience. While they extract each Sentai season's elements and run them through the Power Rangers machine, ultimately there is the question, what will this team and show be called? When Power Rangers names their shows, they look at all the prevalent themes within its respective Sentai and apply the PR filter to it so that it fits the style and the brand. Over the years, we've seen a lot of different Power Rangers names, and we've gotten a feel for just how the PR team likes to name their seasons in ways that they feel will best resonate with their target audience. So just how good of a job do they do? That's what I want to look at today. In what I guess is a bit of a tier list video, I want to take a look at the naming conventions of each Power Ranger season and rate it based on its creativity, thematic relevance, memorability, and other relevant factors. We'll be taking a look at all the mainline shows and see how they stack up. So without further ado, let the name game begin. Before we get started, let's look at a couple typical tropes we've seen throughout the Power Rangers naming history. First off, there's the magic word count. The number of words in the name and the title is pretty important because if it's too long, it's gonna be difficult to remember. With Super Sentai's naming, they have it broken down as adjective Sentai, team name. Max, that puts them at 3 words in their full name. Power Rangers uses its full term in each season's designation, so it's already down 2 words. They can't necessarily match Sentai's 3-word guideline though. The term Power Rangers essentially acts as a Sentai part of the full Sentai name, so they kind of need 2 more words in order to make their team name creative enough and distinct enough. Having 2 words allows for some complexity while also keeping things very simple at the same time. It's usually in the form of adjective noun, although not always done as such. Either way, the 4-ish word formula is usually the perfect way to notate a Power Rangers team without it being too much of a mouthful. The next thing I want to talk about is the word that we definitely see a lot of, whether it be in official Power Rangers titles or fan-made ones, force. A popular word in Western and Korean adaptations. The word force made its first appearance in Power Rangers Time Force and since then has made reappearances in Wild Force, Mystic Force, Mega Force, and Super Mega Force. That's 5 out of 23 teams that have shared this word, which may not seem like much, but it's a decent proportion of the bunch. I think the word force is a bit too easy and sort of a crutch or fallback when thinking of a team name. Sentai's definition is task force, so sure it makes sense to use it, but like we said, Power Rangers does the job that Sentai does in the name, so it sort of becomes redundant. You could just slap the most relevant adjective to the word force and call it a day. It'll be effective to some degree, but it'll also feel overused, especially when other teams have been able to be much more creative with their word choices. Falling back on force just seems like a bit of a cop-out, in my opinion at least. While these are the main tropes I've commonly noticed with Power Rangers naming conventions, there's also another aspect of this that is done differently between Power Rangers and Super Sentai. Earlier in this video, I mentioned that the name has to work in a multitude of contexts, one of which being a reference to the Rangers team and individual names. In Sentai, their team name is just a 3rd word of the title, like the Kyoryuger Sentai Zyurangers are just called Zyurangers, and the Bakuage Sentai Boom Boomgers are called Boom Boomgers. It's a subtle detail, while that 3rd word becomes unchanged for Sentai's purpose, the teams in Power Rangers are typically referred to an adjusted version of the show's name. For instance, the Lightspeed Rescue Rangers being the Lightspeed Rangers, the Lost Galaxy Rangers being the Galaxy Rangers, and the Operation Overdrive Rangers being the Overdrive Rangers. Like I said, it's a subtle, arguably inconsequential detail, but it also shows the different level of connection between the name and the identity in comparison to its Sentai counterpart. I'm not saying it's better or worse, but it's just interesting to see how that part of the name is handled and how important it may or may not be. That's about all I have for the preamble of this video, because now it's time to get into the meat. Let's take a look at every Power Ranger's name across the years and assign them a rating between 1 to 5, 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. I'm going to look at each of these titles based on their concept relevance, linguistic flow, and overall creativeness. A good name should be memorable and distinct, being able to effortlessly match itself to its corresponding property. Let's start things off with the big one. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Now, this is definitely an exception to the rule. Heck, I guess it was done before any rules were set in place. Whenever I look at this name and how it doesn't really directly relate to the concepts from Zyuranger, I always think that this name was put together without the foresight of continuing and evolving this franchise for the next 30 years. It's a pretty 90s name and sets the tone for the universe that they would create, with less importance on the universe they were adapting. It's a solid household name, however its goofiness lends a lot to the connotation that Power Rangers has as just being a silly kids show. Also, I'm not really the hugest fan of how each individual ranger is referred to as the Mighty Morphin Color Ranger. This name plays by a different set of rules, so I'll just give it a 3 for now. Power Rangers Zeo. At this point, we're officially starting the Power Rangers blank naming convention. Zeo is a great choice of words. Interestingly enough, looking at the lettering of the word Zeo does seem to match up quite well to the shape themes of the Rangers. Sure, it doesn't do the whole 2-word thing, but Zeo is unique enough of a word that it actually works pretty well on its own. Simple, effective, a 4 in my book. Power Rangers Turbo. This one I've always thought was pretty funny. Turbo is based off of Sentai's Car Ranger, which is the second vehicle-themed Sentai after Turbo Ranger. Turbo is an objectively more interesting word than car, so it makes perfect sense for it to use it to put in a dash of the high-speed concept. But I guess that's because to English speakers, car is very generic, and to the Japanese audience, it could be seen as more unique. Solid effort. This gets a 3 from me. Power Rangers in Space. I have always disliked this name. I give InSpace credit for taking Mega Ranger's high-tech concept and pushing it way further and making it into an outer space story. But In Space is such a boring and less creative way to illustrate this point. I think designating the Rangers as Space Rangers is great, but the overall name is not executed as well. 2 for you. Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. This name is solid. It basically does the same thing that the Japanese title Ginga Man does by directly translating Ginga. I'm not really sure how I feel about the Lost part, but they're referred to as Galaxy Rangers, which is not bad and works well. It's a 4. Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. This is a stellar, dynamic name. It very effectively paints the picture of what the core concept of this team is: emergency rescue service arriving at the speed of light. I don't have much to say on this other than that it is a fantastic Power Rangers name, and I think even an improvement on its Sentai counterpart. 5. Ha, no pun intended. Power Rangers Time Force. Here we see the first instance of the word force within the Power Rangers timeline. I think this is a good example of its usage though. The organization the Rangers stem from are literally called Time Force, and the Ranger designations feel like a new and specialized rank. It's short and sweet and sounds good too. You can't deny that hearing the singer shout Time Force in the theme song is incredibly hype. This one gets a 4. For Force. Haha. Power Rangers Wild Force. If you think it was too soon to see the word force again, you're absolutely right. It was a very interesting choice to do a repeat of this naming style, and this very practice most likely led to the word force being a highly predicted inclusion in future titles. I think Wild Force is an okay name. It mirrors its Sentai counterpart Gal Ranger pretty decently, since Roar wouldn't necessarily work as well for their name, although I guess if you called them Roaring Rangers? Nah, Wild Force is fine. 3 it is. At this point, we experience a change in ownership with Saban selling the franchise to Disney. Disney, being the creative powerhouse, would show just how much they could do with this wildly popular property, starting with Power Rangers Ninja Storm. This name is a really good name. It not only properly alludes to the Wind and Thunder Rangers, both elements being prevalent in storms, but also leans into the thunder imagery that Power Rangers made for itself. The lightning bolt symbol, from its inception in the original Power Rangers logo, is an iconic part of the brand, being preserved to fit different logos and properties. Up until now, this element wasn't really leaned into, except like the labeling of the Thunder Swords. Ninja Storm is pretty darn clever and does more than just slap on the word ninja and call it a day. It's a 5 in my book. Power Rangers Dino Thunder. Yeah, now we're talking. Leaning into the lightning branding really opens up the floor for some creative names. Dino Thunder is a strong name, although it doesn't have as much of a thematic correlation because thunder isn't really a core piece of the Aba Ranger concept, although you could argue that thunder serves the same purpose as Bakuryu or Blastosaur, which paints an explosive imagery, and the thunder part kind of ties things back to MMPR, which the series itself does too, so okay, a 4 it is. Power Rangers SPD. This one is good. Very good. It takes the name directly from Deca Ranger and repurposes it for its own use. In my opinion, Space Patrol Delta has a lot more flair in comparison to Special Police Deca Ranger, especially for its specific context. It has its own impact, and getting there was so simple. This was a really smart way for them to use something that could have potentially been difficult to work around and turn it into an iconic name. 5 for a Space Police, folks. Power Rangers Mystic Force. Now, okay, we're back to using Force. I love the concept and aesthetics of Magi Ranger, but Mystic Force is definitely a less inspired name than I'd expect. While it is a bit lacking in the creative department, I think it does present a cool contrast in the name itself. It sort of feels like a magical task force, which is, well, what this team is. It's not bad, but it could be better, so it gets a 3. Power Rangers Operation Overdrive. This name is definitely one of the more interesting and creative ones, but I did always feel like it was a bit much, almost to the point that it felt like a fan-made name. I think having the alliteration of O words makes it easier on the tongue, and it sort of matches the circular compass part of the logo. It does sort of set an interesting preconception that the motif will be all about speed, which it isn't really. 3 it is. Power Rangers Jungle Fury. It's always very interesting how Power Rangers may shift the emphasis on different parts of a Sentai's concept, especially through the names. Geki Ranger's full name, Juken Sentai Geki Ranger, pretty blatantly outlines its combined animal and martial arts themes. While the show itself adapts the fighting animal styles pretty well, the name itself seems to emphasize more of the jungle animal concept, which is pretty fair because that's the easier part to market. It's still a solid name though, with the Fury part referring to both animal ferociousness and the fury of fighting techniques. Jungle Fury gets a Jungle Fury. Power Rangers RPM. So I dig the RPM journey and identity. I did a video on it before. However, I do feel like RPM is a name that would have been a better fit for an adaptation that was closer to Go Onger. Because of its darker tone and its straying away from the racing side of things, it just feels a bit misaligned, but I do give it credit for being simple, and I also give them credit for not calling each Ranger RPM blank Ranger, and instead calling them Ranger Operators. A bit of a misaligned identity, but it's okay. It gets a 3, 1 point for each letter. After a memorable run with the mouse, Power Ranger's situation would be a bit shaky until it found its way back to its original owner, intent on bringing it back bigger than ever. This next season would be Saban's way of telling the world that Power Rangers are not here to play around. So the world was introduced to Power Rangers Samurai. Well, I guess you can't really get any simpler than that. This name leaves zero mysteries on what this concept is. It's simple, kind of in your face, but to the point where it does feel a bit uncreative. Like, Shinkenger didn't just call themselves Samuraija or anything, they at least put some effort into not taking the easy way out of this. It's fine, but I think they could have done better. 3. Power Rangers Megaforce. This name is sort of textbook uncreative. I get that they were trying to have Megaforce serve as a foundation for Power Rangers revival and whatnot, but the name is just not it. It's incredibly bland, fusing 2 generic words together to create something even more generic. I suppose I can't really dock any points for them for not taking the Angel theme into consideration, because it didn't play a part in the show really. I'm not a fan, it's a 2 for me. Power Rangers Super Megaforce. I'll only comment on this super season because it directly refers to a new team and aesthetic, but I don't have many new comments that aren't similar to my previous ones. While I sort of understand why they mashed Goseiger and Gokaiger together in order to fuse different Sentai elements a la MMPR, this name is just not good. If Megaforce was a generic combination in itself, this one is a super mega generic combination. It can join its brother in the 2 squad. Never mind, it's a 1. Power Rangers Dino Charge. This one is a very good name. Not only does Charge refer to the Dino Battery gimmick, but it really gives us the image of a strong team of Rangers charging into battle. I don't have much to say about this one other than it works really well. 4. You know what? 5. Power Rangers Ninja Steel. See, this is what I think should have been done with Samurai, using the main theme and combining it with something to give the name some more flair. Ninja Steel I think is a solid name, especially because the Shuriken are a huge deal in the Ninja concept. Something I'll give Ninja Steel credit for is the questionable change of the changer, going from Ninja's Ninja Ichibanto to the Ninja Battle Morpher. I think it was smarter than to move away from the sword changer and put an emphasis on something that more resembled the Shuriken to link the entire concept together more. However, that's also why I feel like it's slightly misaligned, as the steel part does make me think of the sword first instead of the Shuriken. It's a really good try though, I commend the effort. 4 for me. And with that, Saban's mighty resurgence would come to an end as the brand would be handed off to another strong player in the scene, Hasbro. Hasbro had an opportunity to put their own spin on the IP and see how they could apply their vast brand knowledge to this beloved franchise. And so they would introduce the world to the Power Rangers as they would now be known as Power Rangers Beast Morphers. You know, it's really funny because this name is pretty much what I'd expect from Hasbro. This is a unique name and a strong go for Hasbro's first attempt, because at least it wasn't Beast Force. What I will say though is that it is creative while lightly straddling the line of being generic. The Beast portion refers to the animal themes with the Go Busters, while Morphers is just general Power Rangers terminology. It sort of forgoes the special ops theming with this name. I almost feel like it could have better fit with Juoju or something. It also does very much sound like a toy line in itself rather than a team name, which is why I feel like it's so Hasbro coded. It doesn't feel as applicable when utilized as a team name, so it's gonna be a 2 for me. I'm sorry, Hasbro. Power Rangers Dino Fury. This name is not terrible, but it's not phenomenal either. We did see the resurgence of the term Fury, which was kind of exciting. However, I feel like it is less fitting for this team, as I wouldn't necessarily associate the night aspect with the word Fury. If anything, Dino Fury would have been a great alternative name for Dino Thunder, especially with their power-up forms. If Ninja Steel hadn't used the word steel already, I think Dino Steel would have been great, especially to put emphasis on their swords. In any case, it's a safe name, playing into familiar territory, but also misaligning itself slightly in terms of its identity. It's a 2. And finally, we have Power Rangers Cosmic Fury. It's kind of hard to rate this name without thinking of the entire adaptation situation overall. I'm not going to spend more time harping on the missed potential of Q-Ranger, but I will say that Cosmic is absolutely the right term to be using for this. The only downfall is that it reuses the word Fury, which does make sense because it's serving as a direct sequel to Dino Fury. Evaluating it by the name alone, well, okay, it's a 2. It's a big deal to some and a smaller deal to others, but either way, Power Rangers names say a lot about them. While we're currently waiting to see what we can look forward to on the Power Rangers horizon, I hope we can see some more new, fun, and dynamic names enter the franchise's history. Here's our full spread of Power Rangers name rankings. What do you think, and what are some of your favorite Power Rangers adapted titles? Let me know. Thanks as always for watching. I'll be back next time with more fun Toku topics to Toku talk about. See you all next time.